Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and excuse me if I look a little tired. I just finished watching the first 3 episodes of Andor Season 2, and yes, it was a masterpiece. I mean, they just... everything that really worked well in the first season of Andor, they did better. And then everything they didn't do well in the first season of Andor, they did especially well in this one. For instance, one of the only criticism I really have for the first season of Andor was that it wasn't paced well for a streaming audience. Remember, we had like 12 episodes, but they're really like made into 4 3-episode movies each. And so when you release these type of shows on a weekly basis, like the second episode of each arc was especially slow. And I could see just like viewer retention was going down during those episodes. But anyway, they fixed it this time around because Andor Season 2 starts out with a bang, in true Star Wars fashion. And at the center of all of this was a very special prototype TIE fighter, which in true Star Wars fashion needs to be stolen by the Rebels. This was a TIE fighter that's only been seen in Legends up until now, so it was very exciting to see it be brought to life on screen. And guys, if you remember just how excellent the last Starship scene was in Andor, well, you're in for a treat with this one. Because the ship we're talking about here, the TIE Avenger, is not a normal ship. It represents a crazy what-if scenario where Senior Fleet Systems is commanded to create a TIE fighter not focused on economy or maintenance costs, but on pure survivability and killing ability. Look, the Empire has a lot of money, has a lot of power, but also designs really stupid and cheap vehicles and weapons for some reason. It's kind of cool seeing them actually focus on making something extremely lethal and using all of their resources to make it happen, because this is one special ship, guys. The only problem is this ship is a prototype, it's a one-off, and it seems like our test pilot is none other than Cassian Andor, sitting all slyly in that prep room, dangerously spewing Riz all over the place and convincing this poor sweet tech to risk her life for some crazy plan. It's very clear to me that from here on out, Cassian Andor is going to be a lot more like Luthen Rael, for the greater good and all. So usually when they bring a ship like the TIE Avenger from Legends into canon, a lot of stuff is lost in translation, and not in a good way. And the TIE Avenger we see in Andor is a bit different from the one in Legends, when we take a look at the specs and the armament. But the purpose of this ship still stays relatively the same. The TIE Avenger was a reactionary move by the Imperial military. Basically, the Rebel Starfighter Corps was almost unstoppable in the early days of the war because of the lack of parity between Rebel snub fighters and the very basic TIE fighter line. The Rebels' fast, heavily armed, and hyperdrive-equipped fighters were simply too mobile for the large and slow Imperial military to hunt down. And when the Empire finally managed to trap Rebel starfighters in one place and deploy TIE fighters against them, the Rebel pilots, despite being poorly trained, fared pretty well. I think you can only really blame it on the airframes or the space frames. The X-Wing, while a bit slower and less maneuverable than the standard TIE fighter, was also more rugged, had shields, and also had a lot more firepower. The A-Wing was way too fast for a TIE fighter to intercept, and those armed freighters the Rebels liked to use were basically just like jack-in-the-boxes that were, full of deadly surprises inside of them. Like you step out of your squad car thinking that you're involved in a routine pullover of the Star Wars equivalent of a Econoline van, only to see the door slide open and a recoilless rifle pointed at your face. That's what it's like pulling over the Millennium Falcon, guys. It's not fair. And so the TIE Advanced series of experimental fighters were created to counter this threat. And their design and upgrades were featured in other mass-produced starfighters like the TIE Interceptor, which was mass-produced. Although features like shields, hyperdrives were still reserved for more specialized platforms, which is where the TIE Avenger comes from. Now, the TIE Avenger closest competitor would actually be the TIE Defender program that was started out by Grand Admiral Thrawn. The 2 TIE Defender variants are probably amongst the best TIE fighters ever built, and I think the TIE Avenger also belongs in that same league. It's simply a very excellent and probably over-designed starfighter, as we'll see. The major difference between a TIE Defender and an Avenger is that it's a lot larger and more feature-packed. A rough comparison might be the F-22 versus the F-35, with the Avenger being the latter fighter, of course. But now that we've seen the TIE Avenger in live action, not only does it look beautiful, it also has some really, really cool design features that surprise me. For one, we have what seems like a completely new and overhauled combat HUD system paired with a control scheme that I don't think anyone has seen before. I mean, Cassian Andor is clearly very pissed off that the Rebels didn't tell him about this because he wasn't really trained to fly this thing. He had to figure it out by himself. Actually, forget about flying the ship. When Cassian first enters the ship, he can't even find the seats or the controls, which is as good of a deterrent against starfighter theft as, a stick shift is against auto theft. But in all honesty, when I see this kind of stuff, it looks really cool, but it's completely unnecessary. You know, like the frugal car buyer in me just looks at that thing and thinks, oh, that's like German engineering. You're just adding on a bunch of cool gizmos onto there so you can charge me more money, but like once the warranty runs out, I'm not gonna fix that. That's gonna be a problem. Like, what do you do if the mechanism on the seat thingy is broken? Like every other Miata pop-up light. What if that thing folds while you're sitting on it? Like, do you die like all of those people who are inside of Autobots when they transform? What happened to those people? How much weight does that seat add to the overall space frame? I mean, it's definitely heavier than a seat that does not retract into the floor. More importantly, did you really fucking get rid of the ejection seat so that the seat can go into the floor like that? Like, no, man, give me the ejection seat instead, please. Maybe this is like an autopilot thing. You know, you can get rid of the entire control system because it's designed to be flown remotely. You know, you could fill the ship full of goods or even people and transport it to one location or another. The cockpit, despite being pretty small, is still larger than a standard TIE. Like, it's roomy in there. They put a lot of people in there. It's like one of the storylines, the people trying to escape in that thing. I think it's also very likely that this TIE Avenger is really just a testbed for Senior Fleet Systems to try a bunch of random new systems on. This is clearly not a mass-produced ship. It never will be. They're just going crazy with the design here. Now, the control surfaces are even more unorthodox here. There's no steering wheel, no traditional flight stick either. Instead, you got this ball thing, which serves as a throttle, although it does seem kind of inverted compared to what Cassian is used to. Maybe that's another security thing, right? If the advanced prototype ship slams backwards into the wall of a hangar, most likely there's a criminal in there trying to steal that thing. The ball thing also seems to control the ship's yaw or strafing abilities. That's the left joystick for all of you crazy battlefield helicopter pilots out there. And then on the left side you have the actual joystick thing, but it seems like your arm is also locked into place with a series of rings. This I actually appreciate. I actually think this is the coolest design feature. I mean, it's even cooler than the Gatling guns in my opinion. And here's why. When you're jinking left and right, you know, in a starfighter, in a dogfight, your body's moving all over the place, even with the inertial compensators dialed up. And this means your arms and hands are also shifting around. Now, what are you doing in your hands in these situations? Generally, you're using them to grip onto things and brace yourself when you're doing those extreme movements. Now, the problem is, if the thing you're holding onto is your actual control stick, gripping it very hard might lead to like unwanted inputs that slam you into a wall or something. And this is something I actually, unfortunately, understand very intimately. Like the first time I rode a motorcycle when I was a kid, I didn't understand how to do the friction zone thing. You know, like all motorcycles, well now they aren't, but most motorcycles are manual. So you have a clutch, and I released the clutch way too early, and I was whiskey throttling. I ended up in the back saddle of my motorcycle, and at that point, I was terrified, and so I instinctively reached for the controls, right? Because my hand was not attached to the control. It was separate, and I ended up reaching for one of the handlebars, and of course, that unbalanced the entire thing, and I low-sided. That was my first experience. So I truly understand how difficult it is to keep your body in the right position to actually control a vehicle that you're moving. This is not something you think about when you're driving on the street in normal traffic conditions, but this is probably something you think about when you're in very crazy conditions, like in a TIE fighter upside down. And so this kind of crazy design where your arm is connected to the controls and your hand is free to engage in the stick without having to worry about gripping them too hard because that's your only place of contact, preventing you from flying out of your seat. I really like this. It's an interesting design choice. I don't know if it would work in real life, but at least in this case, you just don't have a contraption that looks cool for the sake of looking cool. There's actually a reason why you would want something like this. Although I do have to say, I could definitely see a lot of pilots getting their arms ripped off. Maybe. Now, I do find it interesting that the Empire would design a completely new control scheme, because this also means a lot more training, and that costs money. The beauty of the TIE Fighter line and also the Boeing 737 MAX line is that if you could fly one of the ships in the line, you could pretty much fly them all with very limited retraining or flight hours. I mean, heck, you could probably just train these pilots with an iPad or something, and it'll be just fine, like no one will die. But yeah, the engineers at Senior Fleet Systems did an excellent job at standardizing everything on these ships. I mean, most TIE Fighter pilots didn't even have a personal ship. They just shared with everyone else. And so for them to incorporate an entirely new control scheme just for this one ship means that there has to be some pretty big upgrades or advantages. Again, this might just be a theft issue. You know, the Empire got tired of losing so many TIE fighters and shuttles to those pesky rebels. They definitely don't want this thing to be stolen. Or more likely, this is just a better, more intuitive system than the old system of the, the actual flight yoke. Another thing I really liked on the TIE Avenger is the heads-up display. Like, me and my editor Congo were kind of geeking out about it because, like, first of all, it's an extremely clean design, not cluttered at all, which is great. And, like, we've always wanted them for our helmets, when we go riding and stuff. This HUD also seems to be extremely smart and useful. It's very capable of detecting enemy threats at ranges beyond line of sight. And it can also just help pilots see things that might otherwise be missed by your naked eye, but picked up by other type of sensors, right? Like if someone is hiding behind a cloud of dust, it seems like the tracker can pick it up. And that's basically like half the battle when it comes to engaging in a dogfight, right? If you see the enemy first, you're gonna have a huge advantage. Okay, now let's talk about armaments, because this TIE Avenger has no chill. First, instead of having a missile launcher that can fire multiple rounds, the TIE Avenger just seems to have what looks like rocket launcher tubes lined up on the S-foils. I think there are 24 of them in all. I imagine these are concussion missiles and not the much more potent and heavier proton torpedoes. Even so, 24 concussion missiles is ridiculous. That's more firepower than most fighter bombers have in universe. And so immediately, this ship has terrific ground attack and capital ship attack capabilities. But this all kind of seems redundant when you take a look at this green plasma laser cannon thing that they have that makes massive holes through fortified blast doors. And then of course you have the dual Gatling guns that fire so quickly it might as well be a beam weapon. Watching Andor mow down all those stormtroopers, as satisfying as it might be for some of us, it made me uncomfortable. Using starfighter weapons on infantry, that just seems mean and wrong. Oh, and then I mentioned the TIE Avenger also seems to have 4 wing-tipped blaster cannons. Again, it's like Senior Fleet Systems just created this platform and they're like, let's just put as many things on this as possible. I mean, I imagine that when you have a finished product, when you move beyond the experimental stage, you're gonna have to move at least one of these weapon systems off of this thing. It's too much. Now, we don't actually see the ship's shields engage. I'm almost certain that this ship does have shields and also a hyperdrive, but it doesn't really matter because it's clear that this ship is super robust. As Andor is trying to escape from that hangar with the TIE Avenger, he bashes into the wall, the ceiling, the floor. I mean, it's enough damage to completely wipe out a less fortified ship. Star Wars material science is absolutely crazy. But anyway, guys, that is my coverage of the TIE Avenger. I want to know what you guys think about all this. Like, why is Andor stealing this? Like, what capabilities does this ship have that makes it special enough that you're going to risk one of your most talented operatives to steal? Or could they just be looking for intel on the TIE Avenger? Kind of like how the Rebels, the Spectres, were looking for the TIE Defender. I mean, in a lot of ways, like, the story of Andor is similar to the story of Rebels. I guess you can only tell so many different types of stories during this period of time. Or maybe they just are naturally gravitating towards this type of story. But yeah, it seems like every Star Wars film has some kind of plot line where you have to steal a prototype ship for one reason or another. I'm excited to see how this all plays out. And guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome coverage of Andor. Got a lot to say about the first 3 episodes. A lot of cool things to say. So stay tuned. I'll see you next time. And as usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.